Hello, YouTube world. My name is Jordan Ray, and I am making another Google Apps Script video, again from the compound in Beijing, China. And it's been an interesting month in Beijing. I don't know if you've heard, but a virus has spread from the southern part of China all over the world and made some news. So we're going to make a video today using some data about that virus, pulling it into a data sheet. But the other things that I want to try out are due to the fact that AppMaker has sent out a message that it is shutting down in a year from now. So a few months ago, I made a video series where we built an application, some of the tutorial applications from Google AppMaker to kind of see what it was all about. And turns out other people were as meh about the experience as I was and are not using it, and so they're closing it down, which it goes to show how they iterate over ideas fast. If it's not working, move on to something better. Well, to replace that, you're going to have to take any applications that you had on that platform and build them from the ground up. And to make that even easier, in Google Apps Script, they have released the V8 runtime, which allows modern syntax in Google Apps Script projects. And I had no idea that ES5, which is the old runtime that was being used in Google Apps Script, was called Rhino, which is interesting. However, that is the now legacy JavaScript interpreter, and we're going to be using V8. And the goal of this project is going to be to take all these CSV files that I found here on GitHub, being collected by, I guess, Johns Hopkins. They've got the Johns Hopkins logo on their repository. But they're all numbered by date, and then they just have some totals for every date about the virus. How many confirmed, how many deaths, and how many recovered. And then it's broken down by province, state, country, region, last update. So we want to concatenate all of these CSV files into one data sheet. And here you'll see the result. And instead of having them all in different files, we're going to have them all in one table, and we're going to take that date and place it on the left. Okay, so the first thing that happens when you log in is it actually gives you a notice. This project is running on our new AppScript runtime powered by Chrome V8. And let's up this scale here. Now, you can actually toggle back and forth between the runtimes under the Run tab here. I'm going to leave it running, and as we kind of talk about the code that I've written. The first thing I'm doing is defining a date range, and let's look at that function. It's pretty standard. There's no actual new syntax here in this. I'm just actually grabbing all of the dates starting at January 22nd, and then all the way to the current date, which will correspond with the file names here. And then returning that array. And then we actually have to loop through the array to generate the requests. And here we're going to use some V8 powered code, the arrow function. This allows us to write anonymous functions instead of just function like that. We can actually arrow function it. And the only difference has to do with the way variables are scoped, and there are tons of resources out there to kind of give you more information about that, but just know that they're very similar. It's just a new syntax, and all that's doing is returning an array, sorry, not an array, an object with the, isn't that interesting? Look at that color highlighting, syntax highlighting. It doesn't Well, then this backtick here. This is not a normal string. It ends up being a normal string, but it's instead of using the single quotes, we are looking at backticks just to the left of the one. And that allows us to, they might be called string literals or template literals if you want to look them up in MDN for more clarification. But they allow us to pass variables into the string. Oh, geez, I don't like the way that zoom in works. But they allow us to pass in variables here so that we can kind of, as we're iterating over the date range, create a new URL. And then we're muting HTTP exceptions because I believe if we don't, when we run fetch all, it will throw in error. So what are we doing with all of those responses? Well, we got to actually parse through them. We're going to throw away any 404s. Because the responses come back in as an array, we can loop through it with reduce. And first thing we'll do is throw away any 404s. And then we're going to take the date for that specific one, and we're going to push that onto each row and return the array as a complete package. So this is another V8 powered syntax, the spread operator. It basically is the same thing as adding an element to the zero, the beginning of an array, which you would do with splice, I believe. You can splice a value in there, but it's a little easier to do it here. Now, we could actually even, I'm going to use the push here. Now, it is a little complicated because I'm running a reduce method inside of a reduce. There's probably a more effective way to do that. Any ideas, leave them in the comments below. But I just wrote this quickly, and that's what came to my mind first. But ideally, you would not nest these arrays, but I have a reduce inside a reduce. And then finally, we're going to take that whole multi-dimensional array, and we're going to pop it onto the sheet, where we end up with all this lovely data here. Almost 2,000 rows of data having to do with the novel coronavirus. Ready to be pumped into a visualization. Now, next steps for this app would be to create an update. So you can run this, and without creating a new date range, it just takes the date, the last known date here, which is the 20th, and we're going to go, and we'd go from there, pull all of the data from there. I can probably do that pretty quickly because you can do things like you can pass in parameters like start date and give them default values, which is super interesting. That's another V8 feature. And I think that's a pretty good start. The other fear is the logger. So if we, and I changed it back to, but logger.log, when you run this, you end up with a logging function that takes forever. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 10. Wow, it's still going here. There we go, popped up. So that's over 10 seconds of waiting for it to just say, hello, YouTube. So you're going to want to migrate over to the console.log and using the stack driver logging. It's a pretty simple switchover, but it was very handy to have logs right here in the editor itself. So hopefully that's not a deal breaker for anybody, and hopefully this is just a bug that gets fixed at some point and doesn't take forever. Anyways, cheers, everybody. I hope you dive right into V8 Runtime. I look forward to seeing what people say about it in comments and on Twitter and all the various social channels, because it does open up a lot of new possibilities to make writing code easier in this in the editor itself. Cheers, everyone. I will see you next time.